my background is in user experience design and service design and user research. And I've been in this field for over 14 years now. And 7 years ago, I was leading a website redesign for a large retailer, and I observed people experiencing barriers with my designs. And since then, accessibility and later inclusive design became my big passion. And I started researching it and also discovered many new sides to the diversity of humankind and how differently people interact with digital products. And so as a result, I started a project called Inclusive by Design. And in this project, I share firsthand feedback with historically marginalized communities, also case studies, interviews with industry leaders, and research around diversity and inclusion. And also while working on this project, I noticed that first iterations of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and all other official guidelines for accessibility, they didn't really include any guidance about designing for the neurodiverse community. So I conducted research to understand the requirements of this community and what the creators of digital products need to be mindful of to welcome this community to their digital experience. And the outcomes of this research are publicly available on Medium. And also 2 years ago, I founded Inclusive by Design, a consultancy that helps product research and design teams on their journey towards inclusive practices. And I help these teams to clarify inclusive process and methodologies and to embed them into everyday work.
How do you personally go about explaining the importance of inclusive design and online accessibility to someone who'd never even considered it?
If this person has a role in creating a digital product, I'd probably start from a business case and explain that by not considering accessibility, you are excluding large populations from using your product and therefore missing out on both engagement and revenues. And for example, in the UK, the community of people with disabilities has a spending power of £16 billion a year online alone, and £274 billion a year in general for the UK businesses. And if I talk about inclusive design practices, where we include feedback from historically marginalized communities right from the start of the conceptual and design phase, inclusive approach is also a great opportunity to fuel innovation. But there's also a hugely important element to accessibility, which is social responsibility, that we as designers, product creators, but also companies and brands need to be very mindful of. Because like with any physical space, it's a human right for any person to be able to get around and perform the actions that they entered this space to do. And this experience also contributes to the reputation of your brand when people who experience barriers with your products will share, no doubt, will share their feedback with people around them and potentially on social media. And also we see that on the other hand, people who are used to experiencing barriers with digital products immediately notice when a product actually was created with consideration to their requirements and tend to highlight the positive feedback and reward inclusive brands.
How do you think the internet will change over the next 10 years, and what specific features or habits that you exist now do you hope will be seen as of their time?
Well, I think one of the biggest trends that I see at the moment, and definitely already started, is splinternet, or division of one's open online space between countries, sometimes states or territories. And I can imagine that we will see more division in the next few years. And with accessibility, I'm confident that the movement towards accessible digital products will continue, and accessibility will become a standard for product managers, designers, and engineers. But also based on this splinternet trend, we might face variations of accessibility policies, for example, between different territories. And I think we will also see the expansion of accessible considerations and hopefully more awareness, for example, around neurodiversity, because these requirements are essential for this community and will also benefit much wider populations. And also I see a continuing trend for online experiences being accessed through mediums other than screens and keyboards. So for example, speech recognition or augmented reality or virtual reality. But also as these are emerging technologies, we have the opportunity to design them with accessibility and inclusion in mind right from the start.
If you're with someone who needs to check how accessible their website is, but they only have 5 minutes, talk us through how you'd go about showing them and the things that you might point out.
I can think of 2 very quick ways. So first one is to try and navigate the website only with a keyboard, because keyboard accessibility is critical to ensure that users have access to information without requiring a mouse in case they don't have it or they can't use it for one or another reason. But also, obviously, there's a little bit more complexity to the keyboard interaction. For example, keyboard accessible pages need to include the visible focus state and have a logical tab order, and also avoid keyboard traps and holes. And also keyboard accessibility is a good foundation for using assistive technology like screen readers for people who are blind, have low vision, or just prefer audio when they go through content. And there is another relatively easy way to test cognitive accessibility of your website, where you can test it by navigating the website when you are stressed or feeling unwell or didn't have enough sleep. But these 2 ways are really quick and simple, and they work well to raise awareness about accessibility for a website of a person who hasn't really considered it before or hasn't really tested it before. But obviously, to have a more accurate assessment, I would strongly recommend to engage with primary users of accessibility technologies.
In terms of the adoption of accessible and more inclusive digital products, what do you think the biggest challenge is going to be?
Well, something I noticed was that for a long time in product creation, or the product creation processes relied on the bell curve approach. And this approach was focused on designing for the average person and promoted that by doing that, we could serve majority or 80% of the market. And we also thought that we need to focus on this average case and avoid edge cases, just to be efficient and to do it for scale as well. And as we know now, this approach led us towards creating gaps in digital experiences and also building suboptimal products for some diverse communities, and also fully excluding other diverse communities from participating and using digital products. And also, after focusing on the middle of the bell curve for so long, this market also became overpopulated, and the majority of web standards are also built for this group. And however, when we start looking at the edges again in brackets of the bell curve, not only we discover that the audience of so-called edges is actually much more than 20% of the market, but we also notice that there are huge opportunities for improving, evolving, and growing our digital products. And also by improving products for these historically marginalized communities, we actually improve them for everyone else.
What's one thing that every single person can do or learn to play a part in the progression towards a more accessible internet?
That's a great question, because there's actually so many things everyone can do. And I can sometimes see, for example, designers feeling maybe not necessarily empowered if they are not given an accessibility project. But actually there's something absolutely anyone can do without, if they are high in hierarchy or low in hierarchy, absolutely anyone can do. And one simple thing is actually raising your awareness, and also coming back to the maturity model I'm working on. This is the first phase. The first phase on that journey towards inclusive practices, accessible practices, is awareness. And it's a foundation for other information and methodologies. So once you build that awareness, all other methodologies, techniques are very easy to understand and implement. And awareness of this topic opens our minds as well to diverse perspectives and also their value towards creating digital and physical products. And thankfully, today there are more and more resources to build your awareness, including books that describe firsthand experiences from diverse communities. And there are also books from our colleagues in the digital product industry talking about accessibility and inclusive design. And there are also lots of free toolkits, articles, interviews, and even films. But one way that is probably the easiest and most powerful way to raise awareness is to start listening to firsthand feedback from diverse communities. And you can do it by following, for example, hashtags on social media, on different platforms, and following influential voices, and just trying to understand how these communities experience the world. And from my side, I also publish free content on the topic of inclusive design on social media channels, including Medium, Instagram, and YouTube, and also participate in meetups and conferences to raise awareness of these topics. But mainly, I really hope that people will remember to look at accessibility not only as the formal compliance they have to meet and set of rules to follow, but also from the perspective of people who need it, and have these people always in mind, and ideally at the center of design process as well. But raising your awareness can really help with this.